Week 17 Fantasy Football Notes. The second round draft pick rookie tight end Trey McBride had his breakout game, catching 7 of 10 targets for 78 yards and a touchdown. We knew this was in his prospect profile. 2 touchdowns in the last 3 games for Tyler Algier. He had his third straight game over 15 fantasy points. After scoring under 13 fantasy points in 8 straight games, Mark Andrews had his bounce back with 19 fantasy points. 18.3, 20.1, and then in week 17, 23.7 fantasy points for DJ Moore. His connection continues to be good with Sam Darnold. Amari Cooper had his best fantasy week with Deshaun Watson, scoring 2 touchdowns and 25.5 fantasy points. Double-digit targeted week for Dalton Schultz. The second time this season he had 2 touchdowns. He exploded this week. Second time in 3 weeks that Russell Wilson had a top 5 quarterback performance after a roller coaster of a year. 78 yards and a touchdown on the ground, 39 yards and a touchdown through the air for DeAndre Swift, 27.7 fantasy points. Green Bay's defense and special teams went off this week. Michael Pittman Jr. was the only Colt to score 10 fantasy points. 0 Houston players scored 9 fantasy points. KJ Osborne and Jalen Naylor went off for whoever actually played them, and Wentz threw 3 interceptions. 103, 83, and 108 rushing yards the last 3 weeks for Travis Etienne. He had a good day against Houston. RB1, RB1, RB19, and RB7 as of now for Jerick McKinnon for the running back position in fantasy the last 4 weeks. He's got to be in the running for the fantasy football playoffs MVP. Austin Eckler, 122 rushing yards on the ground. 65, 118, and 123 rushing yards the last 3 for Cam Akers. Jarrett Stidham unlocked Davante Adams, who caught 7 balls for 153 yards and 2 touchdowns after trending down. Tyquan Thornton, the second-round rookie for the Patriots, had his second-best fantasy week. Rashid Shaheed, the undrafted rookie, continues to show us some receiving yard upside and raise eyebrows. Daniel Jones had his season-high fantasy performance, throwing 2 touchdowns and rushing for 2 touchdowns. Prior to Week 17, the 2 games that Mike White started in full, he threw the ball a lot to Tyler Conklin, which kind of hinted at this week. Even though the Eagles scored just 10 points, both of Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown had good fantasy weeks. 111 rushing yards and a receiving touchdown for Najee Harris in Week 17. He's trended up for fantasy. Ken Walker had 23 attempts for 133 rushing yards, which marks his second-best rushing total for the season. Christian McCaffrey had a season-high 121 rushing yards and a touchdown. He also had 6 catches, marking a big week for him. And then after 7 straight bad weeks for Mike Evans, he caught 10 of 12 targets for 207 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. 48.7 fantasy points probably won you your fantasy football championship or lost you it.